What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Sweet Georgia Sports Podcast. I'm your host today, and joining me is the always amazing Nicholas Coley. I use your whole first name. Can I do that from now on? Can I call you Nicholas?
Oh, yeah, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'm going to stick with that, or Coley, or, we'll mix it up every week. You can call me whatever you want to. But, I've been kind of upset in the past few weeks. It puts a very bad taste on a really, really good season, which is the bad part about it. But the Atlanta Falcons went to Super Bowl 51 and played the New England Patriots, and it didn't quite end how we would have all liked it to. But that being said, the Atlanta Falcons were still in the Super Bowl, which is a massive, great thing that's happened this year. But the way that they lost the Super Bowl will be remembered for years and years and years, because originally the largest blown lead in Super Bowl history was, I think, around 10 or 12, somewhere around that.
Yeah, it was 10 points a few times. That's what I heard them say during the game.
Yes, that's right. And then, so the Atlanta Falcons go up 28-3, and I'm already planning trips to Atlanta for the parade. I mean, this is the third quarter, not even the beginning of the third quarter, about 7 minutes, somewhere around there left in third quarter, and the Falcons are up 28-3, so I'm starting to celebrate a little early and starting to think about the parade in Atlanta that should have been on Tuesday, and then everything just kind of falls apart, and it's not a lot of fun at all in any aspect of it. But the Falcons ended up falling in that game in a heartbreaker in overtime, 34-28. And that is it's going to leave an awful taste in your mouth for a long, long time. No doubt about it. But you do have to look at the bright side. This is a very young team who was not projected to do this at all. And they still got there. They were in the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of talent on this team and a lot of players who are going to be around for a long time because of how young they are. There's a long time till some of these rookie contracts are up and contracts in general. And we're signing people back now. Taylor Gabriel today said he wants to be a Falcon forever. A lot of good morale around this team, and not to mention the Super Bowl, but also to mention, the coaching changes. We've seen Kyle Shanahan now leave us after an amazing year as the OC for the Atlanta Falcons, as he has now taken the head coaching job for the San Francisco 49ers. And I expect him to do some great things there. If he implements the same offense and gets the right people in his system, he's capable of great things. And I wish him the best of luck because he gave us a really, really fun year. That being said, there had to be a new face. Steve Sarkisian, the Alabama offensive coordinator for one game this year because of Lane Kiffin's departure from Alabama immediately right before the national championship. So Steve Sarkisian was the OC for the Alabama Crimson Tide for one game in the national championship and gave it all they could against Clemson but fell up short. But Steve Sarkisian is about as close as you can get to Kyle Shanahan after doing some research about it. At first, I was kind of upset about the hire because, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem like it would fit us too well. And the guy being a college guy, too, and not being in the NFL much at all, and being around college in all aspects of the game, head coach, coordinator, whatever you want him to be, he's done it. That being said, you start to study him a little more and see he's all about setting up the play action, which is always a beautiful thing if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan because you know what that means, Julio deep or someone deep. But, I think I like the hire. I'm ready to see it implemented, though, during the season, see if it works is just as good as Kyle's, which would be a miracle because, those seasons just don't happen all the time. This was an amazing season, and I'll never forget it. But they don't happen regularly like this. So you can't expect him to do something like Kyle did because, Kyle's the head coach for a reason now. He did amazing things with his team and put the right people in the right places. So a lot of stuff's happened. So, Nick, I kind of just went into an overview of everything from the past few weeks and kind of touched on the season in general as well. What are your closing thoughts, really, on the Atlanta Falcons 2016-2017 season?
Well, I want to talk about the Super Bowl just for a quick second. And I honestly, and I hate to say this, I had the feeling the whole entire time after we went up by more than 10 points, I said, if anybody's going to have the largest comeback in Super Bowl history, it's probably going to be Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And I was unfortunately right, but those two are the greatest of all time. I think if anything, that game proved it. I think if it was any other team, the Falcons would have won, but the Patriots weren't going to go out like that. They weren't going to go out without a fight and a blowout. It's not going to happen to them. But there are a few positives from that game, and one major positive from that game was Grady Jarrett, who man, I've always been a big Grady guy since he came in, and that game just. I'm glad he had that game on that stage for over 100 million people to see. And man, that kid, he can play, and I'm so excited to see what he can do in the future. Deion Jones had a pretty fantastic game. Campbell played well. A lot of the young guys stepped up in that Super Bowl, which was, it was surprising because that's a big stage and a very tough team to do that against, and they did it extremely well. And, as we're going into the off season, we see Steve Sarkisian become our offensive coordinator, and I had to do some research on him, and Mark Sanchez was a first-round pick after playing under Steve, so that's something special, right?
Yeah, it's got to be.
He can make something out of nothing. So he also coached Carson Palmer as well, I believe. So, I'm really excited to see what Steve can do. I know he has a pretty sketchy past with alcoholism, and that's something that we do have to mention, but I'm hoping Dan Quinn, he sees Steve is on the right path and Steve is getting better, and I'm really excited what he can do as a healthy offensive coordinator. We've promoted Marquand Manuel to defensive coordinator, and from what I've read, Manuel is this really beloved, bright mind around the NFL, and everybody is high on this guy, and he's been with DQ since 2012 in Seattle, I think. So I'm excited to see what Manuel can do with this defense. He worked with our DBs this year, and we saw how well the DBs played all year long, especially after Trufant went down. So that's an exciting development. We even see Dan Quinn bring on a former defensive tackle from the 49ers, Bryant Young, for the defensive tackle coach. So that's something to look forward to. He coached with Dan Quinn at Florida. And then we see Dan Quinn hire a former high school coach, Jess Simpson from Buford. He won 10 titles at Buford, 10 state titles. And I think he won 7 as a head coach. And I could be wrong. It was either 3 or 7 as a head coach. Either way, this guy is a very knowledgeable coach. He coached at Georgia State in December, I think. So he's going to be an assistant defensive coach. So that should be interesting to see. And we also brought on this guy yesterday, Bush Hanpan, I think.
That's an interesting name.
As a QB coach, and he's 31. I think he's the same age as Matt, just about. And I was reading about this guy, and he's considered this really bright, young offensive mind as well. So DQ is having this knack for getting these pretty bright coaches on this staff. So, and guys that can grow within the staff, because I'm assuming DQ sees the day of Steve Sarkisian can get this offense going and can get them into a top 10 range. I imagine Steve probably won't be around very long, because that's how football works. That's how NFL works. So we could see Steve eventually leave one day. Then we'll have some of these bright young minds, and they'll be able to step right in, kind of like we saw after Richard Smith was relieved of his duties. We see a guy could step right in from the staff. We don't have to go on a search. We don't have to spend weeks looking. We have the guy ready in there. So, as heartbreaking as the Super Bowl loss was, we have this, I think, a really fantastic head coach in Dan Quinn. I honestly think this guy is a great coach, and I think he's a special coach. He's not the perfect coach. He has some things to work on, but I think he knows what he's doing. He's going to work, and I think he's bringing in the perfect guys for this team to maybe not make it back to the Super Bowl next year. And I know that's what everybody wants to hear, but to give this team, he's building this team to make another run while Matt Ryan is still in his great playing years.
Yeah, this team and the state of this team is really, really good compared to the years past. I mean, if you go back all the way to Mike Smith's last year, you bring Dan Quinn in, and I mean, since then things have been on the uprising. It's been amazing to watch. The how he took this team in his second year to a Super Bowl, in the second year as a head coach in general, is amazing. I mean, the players he had to work with, he drafted correctly. He got the right people where they should be and the right coaches where they should be, and it was amazing to watch. And he hasn't really failed me yet. I mean, the 8-8 season wasn't bad. It's still a big step up from what we were at, and we started off 5-0. I mean, you can't complain there. Of course, you want to make the playoffs that year, but it doesn't matter. We went to the Super Bowl the next year. It's amazing what he's done with this team, and I'm very excited. And I think he's very capable of leading the Atlanta Falcons, not just next year, but for years to come. And the staff he's bringing in around him, I do enjoy it. I do like it. I see what he's doing, setting up the younger player, so we don't have to completely revamp any system or anything like that. If one of these people were to leave again, I think that is an amazing idea, and I'm glad he's doing that. That being said, Dan Quinn has put the Atlanta Falcons in a really good spot for years to come. I think we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and it's fun to watch all these young players excel at such a young age in their career and be a really big help to the team, whether it be offense, defense, special teams. They're all contributing and all doing it for the same reason, not for themselves, but for the team, or if Dan Quinn would say it, for the brotherhood. It's fun to watch, and I think it's going to be this way for a long time, and that's what the really exciting thing about it. If you want to get the bad taste out of your mouth, the best way to think about it is just think about the years to come with this really, really young team. I mean, you look, the Patriots just won the Super Bowl, but when Tom Brady's gone, what's going to happen? I mean, we don't have that question right now. We don't have that central piece that's going to be gone in a few years. Like, we can be really good for the next few years. I read an article the other day about how we have the biggest Super Bowl window of any team in the NFL, even more so than the Cowboys, which they have a rookie quarterback and running back now. I mean, it's wild to see what this team can do in the future, and I'm very excited about it. And another thing I'm also very excited for that we'll talk about right now, actually, is the off season. And you still got that bad taste in your mouth, and we all will, really, until next year, maybe until next year's playoffs, honestly. But it's going to hurt. Don't get me wrong, but the off season is a lot of fun to look at. The draft is one of my favorite events in any sporting event history that's ever been created. I'm obsessed with the draft. I love the draft. And I predicted the Vic Beasley pick last year when the college football season was going on. So, I'm pretty good. But anyways, that being said, I love the draft. I love the free agency stuff. I find it very, very interesting, and I follow it with an eagle eye. I like it a lot. So I'll want to talk about it too. But first, I got to ask you, Nick, what are the Falcons going to do this offseason personnel-wise?
I think, we, especially after watching the Super Bowl and seeing Grady perform that well, I imagine the staff is like, we got to get Grady, a guy right there next to him. Especially the fact that next year we'll have Derek Shelby, Adrian Claiborne back healthy as well. So imagine we can get a guy like Calais Campbell or Jonathan Hankins from New York on the defensive line. I think we have to add defensive line talent. I think we can maybe add, and I keep saying I'm talking about the Atlanta Falcons, but maybe the Atlanta Falcons can add another linebacker depth there. I would like to see them address offensive line in the draft because I think there's some talented guards in there, and some of the names are escaping me right now. But there's some talented offensive linemen in the draft. We need to add a premier defensive line talent, though, and I think one major defensive line talent can really change the tide going into next season.
Yeah, I do too. There's a lot there. You look at the draft as well. Do any names really stick out to you from the defensive line side of the ball?
There's Charles Harris. I like Tack McKinley. The Falcons are picking at 31, so they're probably not going to find an elite prospect at that pick, and they're probably not going to find a guy who makes a huge impact that first year. But this is a very talented defensive line class if you really start looking at it. There's a couple guys who would have been top 15 picks last draft that are probably going to go in the late back end of the first round and maybe even the early second round. So this draft is talented. You got names like Lawson, you got DeMarcus Walker. There's plenty of names. I can't think of everybody right now, so forgive me for that. But I like with the Falcons because I think there's ample opportunity to make this defense, especially top 10 next year. And so yeah. Excuse me, I'm losing my words.
You're good. I saw a lot of and I wanted to bring this up because we're talking about the draft, and it was an interesting rumor and fan rumor that everybody wants. Apparently, I don't know how I exactly feel about it, but apparently a lot of Falcons fans are wanting Jabril Peppers from Michigan, the guy who can play any position on the field and be successful. So he's looking at going late first round, early second round, and I gotta mention it because a lot of Falcons fans apparently really want Jabril Peppers. What do you think about Jabril Peppers being an Atlanta Falcon this year?
I think you said it right there. It's hard to draft a guy who doesn't have a clear position on what he'll play in the NFL. And I think that's why his stock is falling right now. We look at this guy's like, what's he going to play, safety or linebacker? But either way, if he plays safety, I'm pretty sure he would kind of do the same thing Keanu is doing. So he wouldn't really fit there for us. For linebacker, and we have Deion Jones and Campbell, and I don't know what Vic is anymore. I'm assuming
we need to just change it back to DE for Vic. I don't know why we left him as a left outside linebacker, but yeah, we should probably fix that.
Yeah, but Peppers, he's a talented player, but I just think if we're gonna use our first round pick on a defensive line player, I honestly think it should be O.J. Howard if you ask me if he was there. But if O.J. Howard's not there at 31, you got to give me D-line all day.
O.J. Howard now. You like O.J. Howard?
Yeah. And I know people are like, man, we have Austin Hooper. And I'm like, I don't have anything against Austin Hooper. I'm think if you can add a guy like O.J. Howard to your offense, I think you should, because I think he's such a phenomenal player. And I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying they should, because I think there's enough tight end talent to where the Falcons do want to draft there, which I think they may have to, depending on if we bring back Tammy. Because after Tammy, I don't think Tolino is a true second tight end 2 guy. I think he's more of a tight end 3 guy, and I don't know what Joshua Perkins is going to be. I think if we have the opportunity to add another guy there behind Hooper, we should through the draft. But I don't think O.J. Howard's going to be there at 31 anyway. So, and I don't think Peppers really fits with this defense and this team is trying to do at this exact moment. So I'm gonna have to give you a hard pass on Peppers.
Gotta say something about the fan favorites as they're wanting. The fans wanting some crazy stuff all the time. They want us to draft another quarterback or something. But that's just how it goes. Jabril Peppers would be an interesting player. There's no doubt about it.
He's very talented. He can do a lot. Return play. He's a very talented guy. I'm just like, if you look at the Falcons realistically, where does Jabril Peppers fit? Yep. And I don't see a fit for him right now.
If you look at the Falcons right now, I'd have to say like an outside linebacker would be the best fit for him because he couldn't play safety because like you said, he'd be nearly a mirror image of Keanu Neal. But I'd have to say maybe a linebacker slot, maybe. We know he's fast, but it's being committed to one position throughout college and playing that spot. That's what really makes you a very successful player. You see very, very few cases of where that's not true. With I can name 2 right off the top of my head just because of Georgia Southern. J.J. Wilcox, who played probably every position imaginable, offense and defense. And then also Jarrett McKinnon, who played quarterback, running back, cornerback, everything you can think of as well. And those are just 2 from one school that I can just think of off the top of my head from watching them from years. But it's just it's an interesting thing for sure. And I think Jabril Peppers would be a strange fit there because there's just no certainty with him. You don't know exactly what you're getting because in the NFL you're not going to be able to play all these positions like he was in college.
Yeah, you just don't. You don't see guys play multiple positions in the NFL. I know it happens sometimes. I know Deion Sanders did it. I know he played
Yeah.
wide receiver and corner with the Cowboys. I want to say Devin Hester maybe played a little corner and wide receiver with the Bears, but I think he was mostly a wide receiver sometimes.
Yeah.
And then after that I mean, we have a guy that does it, Garland, right?
Yeah, Ben Garland. He's the offensive line, defensive lineman. He got the safety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, which is a funny guy to bring up as somebody who plays two positions, but you just don't see it a lot in the NFL. Guys usually, they play one thing because it's so hard to be at multiple spots in the NFL because multiple spots require these vast different skill sets in the NFL.
Yeah, and in the NFL also, like, they're the best players at each position. It's hard to find a player who can be the best at two different positions in the professional level of a sport. I mean, you just don't find that in the NFL usually. It's a very rarity. It shouldn't. It would be cool and all, but it just wouldn't work out for the Falcons drafting Jabril Peppers.
I think it's just the name. It excites people, and that's probably what.
Anytime there's a Heisman candidate, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, let's get him if he's available." I mean, we saw how that worked out with Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. That being said, we got a little time before the draft, of course. A lot of pro days, the combine, everything else. Just give me a quick little rundown here. Just name a few players. I don't care. Most interesting prospects for the Atlanta Falcons, possibly in this upcoming draft.
Charles Harris is the guy. I think he's from Missouri. You have DeMarcus Walker. I know we've actually made a YouTube video about him. He's still an interesting guy. I don't think the Falcons should draft him at all. You have Tack McKinley from UCLA, who's this really pretty phenomenal athlete. He's a really interesting player to look at, a guy who, with a strong combine, can work his way into the first round. Those are the names off the top of my head. I know there's more. There's Carl Lawson. I think he went to Auburn, right?
Yes.
And the reason I'm struggling is because there's all these talented D-line players who nobody knows where they're going to go, and they're all over the place. So I'm just rattling names off the top of my head.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a very deep draft. That's the best part about it for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, heck, when you go to the Super Bowl, you're going to get the 31st or 32nd pick, and lucky for us, I mean, look here. It's a very, very deep draft in the slots we need. So it's gonna be very beneficial for us. It's great to see that. We'll be patiently waiting for a while towards the end of the draft, that's for sure. But another thing I want to bring up, because a lot of fans also talking about this. Do you see the Atlanta Falcons moving in the draft, up or down?
If they move, I'm assuming it would be up. Although I don't see it at all because I don't think it's necessary.
Yes, I don't think so either.
Unless there's a run on defensive players, which sometimes we watch the draft and people just start drafting wide receivers, people just start drafting corners. If that happens, I could see them potentially moving up just because there's a guy that they like and they're afraid somebody else is going to get them. But I don't see a run on defensive lineman happening because I don't think I've ever seen such a thing in the first round. So, no, I don't see them moving up. If anything, I see them moving down if they feel there's a lot of talented guys that they're looking at who will be there in the second round and they just want to gather more picks.
Another thing I got to mention, too. Now, a lot of fans also interested in moving up in the draft because, I mean, every year every fan's interested in moving up in the draft.
Yeah,
but if the Falcons did move up in the draft, who do you think it would be for?
It's funny because I think the only guy who they would want to draft that would be worth moving up for is like Myles Garrett, right?
Number one, yeah.
unless they plan from jumping 30 spots up. And like they just fall in love with Myles Garrett, and they think that they're Super Bowl bound next year. I mean, they would have to give up probably every pick in this draft to do a thing, and a lot of picks next draft. So I don't see a guy. I haven't really read a lot of reports. I don't know who they're in love with right now. After the combine, we'll start seeing all the smoke screens coming up and who the Falcons are looking at. But right now, I'm gonna say there's no guy I could see them potentially moving up for.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's in the Falcons' best interest to stay put or drop back. I would rather even stay put more than drop back. I think there could be some talent right there at the end of the draft, like you were speaking about earlier. It's a hard time right now. You're coming right off the Super Bowl loss. It still stings. It still hurts. It's no fun at all. You turn on SportsCenter. It's still being shown. It's not fun. I'm ready for baseball to get back, just so we'll stop talking about the Super Bowl. And the NBA playoffs need to hurry up and everything else, and just the Atlanta Hawks need to get that 4 seed and then get swept by the Cavs. Just a lot of things need to happen to get this bad image and taste out of your mouth. But oh man, I think we're going to be really set for years to come. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be a great football team for a long time. If you ask me, in my opinion, they are set up really well for the future. It's going to be a very exciting time in Atlanta. As you can see right now, the Atlanta Falcons are top of the world right now in Atlanta. Even though you lost the Super Bowl, they've got a team that's going to be very, very good and very, very competitive for years to come with Dan Quinn at the helm. And you look over to the Atlanta Braves. A very, very talented team coming up. You had seven players in the top 100 of prospects, which is unreal. It's a lot like the Chicago Cubs were, and you see what happened to them. They just won the World Series. And the Atlanta Hawks, you've got some exciting young talent on there. Some uncertainty on the roster. We really won't know about the Atlanta Hawks until this year's over with and what they decide to do with a lot of key pieces there. But nonetheless, there are some exciting players who have started to blossom this year, especially being Dennis Schroeder and Tim Hardaway Jr. It's a great time right now, Nick. Despite the Super Bowl loss, things are kind of looking up.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think this team was built to make that kind of run this season. I think this team was built to make that type of run in 2017, 2018. And they just lucked up and did it this year. So that shows you how talented this team is. And I see people bringing up all this stuff about, teams haven't, made it back to back and all this mess. And I'm like, well, the Falcons made a lot of history this year. They did all kind of stuff they weren't supposed to do, including losing the Super Bowl in the fashion they did. So, anything's open. If anybody's going to break some records, I guess it's going to be the Falcons, because that's what they're known for. They're known for surprising people in all types of ways.
Oh, yes, you know it. That's the Atlanta Falcons way. Be very surprising in a winning or losing fashion. So that's the only way we'd love it, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, and it's happened in 1998. They weren't supposed to go to the Super Bowl. And, they happened again this year. They weren't supposed to go to the Super Bowl, and then they almost won the Super Bowl. Then they lost the Super Bowl. So,
yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah, it is for sure. I enjoy it as a sports fan. It stinks. You gotta move on. At least we have something to look forward to. You could be a Browns or a Jaguars fan, and your window for success looks like it's another 2 or 3 seasons away, if even that.
Maybe not even that. Maybe about 6. But we are in a good spot, and it's good to be in that good of a position right now, especially with the very, very young team we have, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's really looking up for the Atlanta Falcons, despite the Super Bowl loss. A lot of people saying, "Oh, we'll never get over this," blah blah blah. Well, you will if you have years of winning seasons and years of playoff runs and such. It'll start to feel a little better. The Super Bowl will be the ultimate reliever, though. We do have to win the Super Bowl to feel good about it again. I will say that. I'm a firm believer of you got to win the whole thing after something like this, something as traumatic as blowing a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl.
You do. I just don't want people to get on this whole Super Bowl 52 or bust thing that I'm starting to see people get aboard that bandwagon. I don't think fans should look at it like that, because it is very, very difficult to go to back-to-back Super Bowls, but it's not impossible. I think a bust of a season would be missing the playoffs or getting into the
Yes.
playoffs and losing their first
Yes,
game. But
doing exactly what the Panthers did this year.
yeah, I say the Falcons going to the playoffs and getting to the NFC Championship game and losing if they lost in a competitive fashion. I don't think that would be a bust of a season. I know some people, to them that's a bust. It's Super Bowl or bust every year. I don't believe in that sentiment, but I do believe if this team doesn't make another Super Bowl within 3 seasons, then yeah, we can call all of this. I don't want to call it a waste of time, but just, underwhelming, and disappointing. But this team, if they can win a Super Bowl, I think they need to win a Super Bowl within the next 3 years to kind of justify that loss.
Yeah, it's going to sting and all, but we do need to talk about the season as a whole. Super Bowl aside, we know it leaves a horrible taste in your mouth, but the Atlanta Falcons did make it there. So, Nick, real quick, we're going to close up here in just a minute, but I would like you to talk about the season as a whole and how the expectations were blown out the water and how surprised you were and just everything about it, because it is a remarkable season. We're never going to look at it the same, sadly, because you just got to finish for it to be the best thing possible. But this is probably the best Atlanta Falcons season in the Atlanta Falcons franchise history. So I was very happy to be a fan of it and very happy to be a part of it and be at the games, a season ticket holder. It's a whole lot of fun. What are your closing thoughts on the season as a whole?
First off, I loved watching Matt Ryan play this year. I mean, that was a joy, and it's a shame some people were so anti Matt Ryan MVP the entire year, missing how great this guy was.
Yes.
And Julio is always a joy to watch. He's so fantastic. I love watching the offense as a whole, but there were some guys. Those two, I love them. They're my favorite Falcons probably ever at this point. So I love watching them. I loved watching the growth of Deion Jones and Keanu Neal throughout the season, and that was fun to see. And I also love watching Grady Jarrett, who I said earlier this year, probably like week 1 or something, that this guy is my favorite Falcons defender.
Yes.
And watching him progress from all the way last year to his Super Bowl performance, I'm ready for the Grady Jarrett. I'm ready for the Grady Jarrett bandwagon. I'm ready for Grady Jarrett All Pros.
You ready for the jerseys to be sold?
Yeah, I said I was going to get a Grady Jarrett jersey. I was looking for one way before the Super Bowl. I was looking for one weeks ago, and I'm like, I got to get one now. That's definitely my birthday present next year.
Yeah.
So I'm on the Grady Jarrett bandwagon. I always have been, and there's just so many guys on this team that are absolutely fun to watch. So this season was a joy for me, honestly, watching all these guys play. But, it stinks the way it ended. But if I could do it all again, honestly, even with the way we lost, I would do it again just because of how fun it was to watch.
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, records being broken here and there. Matt Ryan actually winning the NFL's MVP award.
Which is crazy
wild
to look at. When you look at Matt Ryan's career awards, 2016 NFL MVP, who would have thought he would have ever done that, especially after last season?
Yeah, people calling for his head in the offseason, and then he comes out there and tells everyone to shut up and then wins the MVP that year and takes the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's wild. It really is.
Yeah, it is. I'm so happy for Matt, and people for saying he's going to fall off. I don't think Matt has any intentions of falling off. I saw him walking off the field after the Super Bowl with the confetti around him, and I think Matt Ryan is going to shock the world again, honestly. I think he's going to come out next season hungrier than he already was this year. I think Matt Ryan has a shot at another MVP.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, the man's really driven. You can tell. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, just the look in his eyes before games. Like he looks like a completely different Matt Ryan every time he stepped on the field this year.
Yeah, so, people are ready for Matt Ryan to fall off, and For people that saying this is Matt Ryan's most talented team, which is absolutely absurd to me after he's played with Julio, Roddy White, Tony Gonzalez, and Michael Turner,
Yes,
and Harry Douglas, and saying this team with Devontae Freeman and Tevin and Julio and Mohamed Sanu and Taylor Gabriel are more talented than those teams, I don't, we're watching two different versions of football, honestly.
yeah, it's systematic football to me. It's the system what prevailed here, not the personnel.
Yeah, it's just weird to me because this isn't Matt's most talented team, but this is his best season. And honestly, one of the best QB seasons ever if you really want to break it down like that. So I think this is really just Matt playing on another level. I don't think it matters who he played with. I think he could have played with anybody this season. I think he would have went crazy. And yeah, of course, Julio helps. He's Julio.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, every team will have one of those players.
Yeah, for sure. And, guess what? They'll all be back next season, hopefully. So I don't see anything changing.
Yeah, I don't see anyone really leaving. I mean, you look at some spots like Ricardo Allen, who's up in the air right now, but he said he wants to be Atlanta Falcons. Said he'd rather be on the Atlanta Falcons practice squad than any other team in the NFL. And then Taylor Gabriel, who today said he wants to be a Falcon forever. There's a few spots here and there on the defensive line with Rashid Hageman and Courtney Upshaw and places like that. But there's nothing, no key major players are up in the air right now.
And Courtney Upshaw, he was something. Him and Sheed were like, we're probably not going to be back next year. They probably had some type of meeting before the playoffs, like, oh, we're probably about to get cut, man. And they were like, should we start playing now? And they were like, yeah, we should.
we should hit people in the heel and sack them.
I think they definitely played themselves into another contract after their playoff performance. So. They'll be back next season. Hopefully they play with that passion again because if Courtney Upshaw, Rashid, an elite defensive tackle from the free agency, and Grady and Vic and Claiborne and maybe Freeney or maybe some other old guy that we pick up in a young draftee, I'm like, man, this D-line could be top 10 next season, honestly. So it's so much to look forward to, honestly, and I'm excited.
I am. And this is making me feel better about it, Nick. I'm starting to feel even better than I was, in every passing day. But, no, I feel really good.
Just start saying all the names of the players on defense and offense. And it's like, what we could have we're looking at a top 10 offense, maybe top 12 defense next season. Just start saying the names out loud, and it'll help. That's what I had to do.
I'm just going to repeat it. I'm just going to repeat it all night long.
Yeah, and it'll help, I promise.
All right, well, I do want to do one more thing before we leave here, and it'll be really quick. I want to do a way too early season prediction for the Atlanta Falcons next year. Just take it with a grain of salt. But way too early prediction, what do you think the Atlanta Falcons do next year?
I'm going to say this team – because I don't want to say they're going to play with the fire and the motivation from that loss that picks them up every game, but I'm going to say a deep playoff run. I'm going to say an NFC championship game. I almost want it to be against somebody like the Seahawks. I just love beating the Seahawks.
I hate the Seahawks. I hate them.
So I want to play the Seahawks. We beat Aaron Rodgers, been there, done that, right? So I want to see the Seahawks in the NFC championship game next year.
Yeah, I think that would be a fun time, and hopefully it would be in the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So, a lot of exciting things happening next year. We haven't even mentioned the new football stadium we'll be playing in, as the Georgia Dome will be blown up here in about a few months, or not even a few months, about 3 weeks or something like that. I know they're doing it in March, but
that'll be the day. Blowing up the Georgia Dome and making it a parking lot.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, maybe that'll make us feel better about the Super Bowl. Just going ahead and killing all ties. But, a lot of exciting stuff happening next year. And it is a great time to be an Atlanta Falcons fan, as things seem to be in place more than really any other team in the NFL. The Cowboys sitting right there with us. I could see us playing them possibly next year in the playoffs in a deep playoff run in the NFC Championship game or something like that.
The Cowboys will definitely be interesting next year. We've seen some of these young quarterbacks and running back duos come in and, run the league their first year, and then next year they were like, kind of meh. So
yeah,
Although, look, I'm not. I'm a huge Dak and Zeke fan. I honestly am. I think I'm so happy to see a young quarterback running back duo like them. So I'm rooting for them all the way to have success. Of course, I want the Falcons' success to be first, but if I had to pick another NFC team, it would be them because I love watching two young guys prove everybody wrong every single week.
Yes, exactly. Especially someone like Dak Prescott who went fourth round
Yeah.
and everything. It's cool to see.
Man, watching Zeke run the ball is so fun to see him get the ball and just start running dudes over.
Yeah, it really is. He's a special player, and I think he'll probably break that sophomore slump that you see. I don't know really much about Dak right now. He's kind of up in the air. Although he had an amazing playoff game, they still ended up losing to the Packers, but he put them in the best possible scenario to win that game. But I think Zeke is exempt to the sophomore slump. I think you'll see him come out in full swing next year. I wasn't his biggest fan in college. I didn't think he was going to be any good in the NFL.
Oh,
he shut me up.
That's crazy. I saw Zeke run one time. I'm like, oh, he's going to be special.
See, I didn't. I didn't get the hype around him. No doubt he was a special player in college, but I just didn't see him being the player that he has turned out to be. If that makes sense.
And I've only said that twice. I remember I watched UGA's first, Todd Gurley's first, and I know we're running short on time, but I got to say this. Todd Gurley's first play at UGA was a kickoff return for a touchdown. I was like, well, this dude's probably going to be a very special player one day. And I know he's in a really unfortunate situation with the Rams, but I think that's more due to a lack of good coaching and a lack of a talented offense. And he's actually getting our QB coach as an offensive coordinator,
That's
Matt
right.
Howard. So I'm really rooting for Todd to come back and have a fantastic season because I think he's a very special player. But I want to stop. I want to stop talking about other guys because I love Devontae, and Devontae's always number one in my heart.
Oh yeah, they're going to be a special duo next year. We're going to have to pay the man though. We're going to have to pay the man.
Yeah,
too.
and Devontae and Tevin, if this is the last year we see them, I hope they do well.
Yep. And maybe by some chance we might see them for more years to come. Who knows?
Hopefully.
See. Yeah, hopefully. But real quick, we've got about 3 minutes, and I keep coming up with questions. It's just making me feel so much better about the Falcons. But I got to ask you, just one quick sentence, really. What is your biggest, boldest prediction for the Atlanta Falcons next year?
Next year, is it bold saying this anymore? But I want to say Matt Ryan wins back-to-back MVPs.
Yeah, I could see it too. If the system runs the same as it was before, I mean, the man's nearly unstoppable.
Let me say this. This is probably more bold. Grady Jarrett becomes an all-pro.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, that's a good one. And I mean, the way he left in the Super Bowl, I'm very excited to see what Mr. Grady Jarrett can do. Taking some pages out of his dad's book. Hopefully, he'll be around forever for like 15 years, like Jesse Turner was.
So. I hope Grady Jarrett is a Falcon until he's 40.
Yep, that would be great. And then going into the Hall of Fame with the most tackles for loss ever by a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we're running out of time here. About 2 minutes left, so might as well wrap her on up. We got some sad parts of this show, and then we had the bring me uppers and the future and such. So yeah, I'm excited. I am, Nick. I think the Atlanta Falcons can be good for years to come. Got to get that Super Bowl though. That is a priority.
Yep, for sure.
Yep. Well, that being said, this has been the Sweet Georgia Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Sikes. And joining me today was Nick Coley. Always a fun time to talk with Nick. And you know what? Things are looking up. So with that being said, folks, we'll all see you on the flip side. See you, everybody.